All right, welcome. It's time to get back to where we left off in the Gospel of John. And I got confused myself. I forgot where I got to and then realized I covered, two chapters twice. But that's okay because they're some of the most important chapters. So we can definitely redo those chapters. You can never do them too many times because when it comes to the Trinity and deity of Christ, they're crucial texts. I hope everybody really imbibed John 14 to 16. And again, you can never do that too many times because you're always going to notice, right, more and more things the more you go through it. So welcome everybody. Hope you're doing good tonight. If you would like and share, you can support the stream, of course, through the super chats. There's the link. And so I didn't do the part 2 private. I ended up doing it public and not realizing it. So everybody lucked out, right? And then a lot of people are going to get access to the free half. So John 14, 15, 16 were the last, it was Trinity and descent of Christ and Pentecost. All right, that was John 14 to 17. Or I guess 14 to 16. So, as you guys know, we have a big debate coming up about 2 weeks. I don't remember the exact date. I'm not good with dates. I don't remember dates very well. So, but in about 2 weeks, I think. And this time we'll be debating the Sunni Muslim Sheikh. Yes, an actual Sheikh. Sheikh Azrar Rashid. And he's the author of this book, which he sent me, Islam Answers Atheism. So I've had a chance to read several chapters relevant to his take on epistemology and how we know God and how he sees apologetics going. What is the Islamic epistemology in his school? Then we've got a couple other works that I'm working through which have been very insightful for understanding his position. The commentary on the Creed of Al-Nasafi, which I've read a good bit of that one. And then most importantly is the explanation of the Sanusi Creed. So I've gotten most of the reading of that book done. And that is so far, of course, the most relevant as well as his own work on epistemology. If you remember when we did our interview, the Muslims came on the stream and they were like, he doesn't remember every quote by memory. We were doing a geopolitics stream about books I'd read 10 years ago. So there's nobody in the world that remembers everything by recitation in geopolitics. You know, neocon think tank documents from 10 years ago. Nobody remembers all that by memory. And that wasn't even a debate. People in the audience were like, they were too slow boy to get that wasn't a debate. That was just a geopolitics discussion in anticipation of the upcoming debate. I mean, it's just ridiculous. Like the childishness that goes on in a lot of this stuff. No, I'm reading y'all's actual books. Like I've got your stuff here. I think we've demonstrated in multiple public debates that we do the homework. We aren't lazy. There's not been a debate where we didn't bring the heat, right? And I'm not saying that to be mean or arrogant. It's just what we do, right? I mean, that's been debating for 20 years, at least 20, somewhere in there, 2021. So where are we? We are on page 1457 in the Orthodox Study Bible. That's where we're about to pick up. But I think that the timing, right, has been really good for doing the Gospel of John. And I didn't plan it, right? I didn't really plan to time doing the Gospel of John with a debate with Sheikh Azrar Rashid. It just happened. I don't know. But it works out good in God's providence because, you know, the Gospel of John is obviously one of the crucial texts for the deity of Christ and the Trinity. And again, I have to stress, we've seen so many times every single chapter as we've gotten up to John 17 in these discussions that every chapter vindicates the deity of Christ and the Trinity. So far from these being non-biblical doctrines, it's everywhere. And the other night, I just spent the night doing a study of the Spirit in the Old Testament. So I was doing a deep study of the presence and power operation of the Holy Spirit in the Old Testament books. Some of the texts that I had overlooked even. Most of these kinds of texts I have pretty well in my mind. I don't have the whole Bible memorized, obviously, but I have, thank God, a good power of recollection. So most of the time I can remember, if not verse, at least the chapter. And there was a few places that even I had overlooked, references to the Spirit in the Old Testament because, as we are going to see, one of the common objections is, of course, that the Trinity is a doctrine. The objections are all over the place. They're not even that consistent, but it's a doctrine that the New Testament writers invented. It's a doctrine that Paul invented. Oh, no, wait, it's a doctrine that the church fathers invented. Oh, no, it's a doctrine that Nicaea invented. Oh, no, wait, no, it's actually a doctrine invented centuries later. All of these theories that are just constantly all over the place that are very easy to refute. If it was like, we didn't have the internet and you couldn't just Google any of these questions and find out very easily for yourself what is and isn't the case in some of these issues, that would be one thing, right? If this was the 1950s and people were claiming the church fathers don't teach the deity of Christ or the Trinity until Nicaea or some nonsense like this, okay, but that's not the 50s anymore, okay? That we're all on the internets for good or for ill, and any of this stuff can easily be verified. And for a lot of the church fathers, there's not a lot of textual doubt about the veracity of their writings. There might be some doubt about some of the texts, some of the letters, etc. But typically speaking, not a lot of people are doubting the writings of Cyprian. Not a lot of people are doubting the writings on the whole, right, of Athanasius. So, and I'm saying this because of the Islamic apologetic, right? We have sort of stepped into this new arena in the last couple years. It's not really an arena I know a whole lot about. We're 2 years into this, I guess. And we're reading their books. We're getting into their texts. We've got our Islamic study Bible. I'm joking. And I know, and I'm glad that Rashid was nice enough to send me his book. So I'm looking forward to this debate. The topic is going to be Trinity, Tawheed, something like that. Logic of Christ and the Trinity, or something like that. Christology and the Trinity and logic. I don't know, but you get the idea, right? Something like that. And yes, it will be a formal debate. So should be respectful, cordial, scholarly. Rashid is definitely an intelligent man, as you can see from our geopolitics discussion. He's not a silly or stupid person. He's obviously highly intelligent, very respectable person, as far as I can tell in terms of our interactions. But it's becoming really evident to me after a lot of the debates with Muslims and our discussions in the Discord with the many Muslims that are coming in, that the Trinity and the Incarnation are not so much it's not so much that the doctrines are hard. It's that people are unfamiliar with our positions, and they tend to excuse their own positions from similar problems. So in other words, multiplicity in God, distinctions in God, differentiation in God, distinction in God, is not unique to people who are Trinitarians. Okay, and what we're going to find out, this is not about Islam, it's just that what we've been talking about in regards to the Gospel of John, and as far as we've gotten, is so relevant to the debate with Muslims, is what I'm trying to say, on many levels. So on the metaphysics, epistemology level, right, of speaking of distinctions in God, how we know, how we predicate, how we name God, at that level, again, any position that posits an ultimate metaphysical principle, any monotheistic position, the Trinitarian position, etc., everybody's got different levels or ways that they're going to be dealing with the problem or the question or the explanation of distinctions in God. So again, it's not unique to the Trinity or Trinitarian theology. And that's what's going to be really evident, especially here and in the debate. I mean, I can already see this. So thank you for those super chats. We've already got some nice guys there throwing that money at us, throwing those the pittance of scraps at our face, which is fine. Thank you. Continue to throw your scraps at us. If you would, hit like and share. No, we're not going to be debating those goofy people. No, not debating. Yeah, I mean, we got to have some standards here, guys. We can't just accept debates with anyone. Even though, yes, in the past we have accepted some pretty low-tier debates, right? I mean, but, and then at the same time, remember that the debate with Islam, ultimately, I mean, yes, there's the metaphysics and there's the epistemology and the one and many question and all this stuff. But there's also really the issue of the Bible. I mean, that's such a huge part of what it comes down to in terms of the debate with Muslims. And the Muslims, I believe, do not have a consistent, coherent understanding and presentation of how to understand the Bible. And most of the time, they're not familiar with what the Bible actually says. I'm not saying that that's the case with Rashid. But certainly with some of the Muslims that we debated in the past, that's the case. So, just pointing out that it's just so relevant. And by the way, we're going to have to, in this talk, also look at some of the Gospel of John and the Apocalypse, right? Because John, the Johannine corpus, is not just the Gospel of John. Obviously, you've got the letters, and you've got the Apocalypse. So, and there's quite a few Trinitarian passages in the Apocalypse as well. So, again, guys, come on. I mean, almost all the people that people say, well, when are you going to debate? These are people we've reached out to. Okay, so we have reached out to almost all the people that everybody recommends. Most people do not want to do a debate, so there's just no point, really. We kind of give up at a certain point. And anyone who claims that they can do a debate is not true with us, because we've opened up the Discord every week for 2 years for anybody to come debate. So the idea that we're ducking people or we don't want to or we're scared. No, some people we don't want anything to do with, right? Because they're quacks, kooks, feds, okay? And I reserve the right to make a decision about who I want to associate with. So that, in some cases, is why we don't accept every debate with every public person. In other cases, people with 400, 500 followers, it's not worth anyone's time to do that. And those people are just wanting to come on the channel and get a bigger audience and get attention anyway, which is why we offer people to come into the Discord. And 95% of the time nowadays, they don't do that. So it's not actually about that they want the debate. They just want attention for their channel. Yeah, I'll debate Jeff Foxworthy and Jeff Durbin at the same time. If you think occasionalism is true, you might be a Calvinist or a Muslim. Right, so there's my Jeff Durbin Foxworthy reference. I think we asked a year ago about Jeff Durbin, and at the time, the reply was, "There's a 6-month wait list to debate Jeff Durbin. We will put you on the list," or something like that. So, and that was, I think, about a year ago. So, again, I don't. So you guys are always just like, "Do this, debate this first, do this, and it doesn't work like that, right? We asked Stefan for years before he finally conceded. So the way to get these people to debate is for you to ask them publicly, "You should do a debate with Jay." And I reserve the right to debate or not debate whoever I want to, for whatever reason. I don't even have to tell you the reasons why I don't want to associate with certain people. Debate Bertrand Russell, right? I'll go to his grave and I'll debate at the grave. Anyway, I'm just rambling. This is wasting everybody's time. Let's get to this. Now, we saw in John 7:16 quite a bit to do with parachoresis, right? The indwelling, the inner coherence of the persons. And it's funny because, by the way, in Islam, there's similar ideas about the relationship of the attributes and so forth, and the unity. So quite a bit of true for thee, not for me. True for me, not for thee. A lot of that going on in these debates, which, again, is fallacy. So we can't move the goalposts and set up double standards and ad hoc rescue when we're doing the same thing with our position. We mentioned to Robert Sungenis a debate a year or two ago, and he only wanted to debate filioque. I said, well, absolute divine simplicity is prior to filioque, so, and he didn't want to debate ADS. So, I don't know. What can you say? I'm not saying that Sungenis is an evil person or bad-willed or anything like that. It's just, I mean, again, all the people that you guys say debate, we've already done all this. We've been down this road many, many times. And at a certain point, I get tired of like asking, or like reaching out over and over and over, debate me. It's just, I mean, I don't know. Shouldn't be that hard, right? I don't think Jeff Durbin or anybody from the James White domain is going to be interested in doing that kind of a debate. I mean, James White has said over and over and over, he doesn't care about orthodoxy. He doesn't have any time to investigate or study orthodoxy. He's not interested in debating orthodoxy. So you guys ask me 100 times over, when are you going to debate James White? They're not going to debate. So just get over it. Stop asking. And don't ask me for the 1,000th time, will you debate Destiny? I've already emailed and asked and talked to Destiny 5-6 times about doing a debate. And Destiny eventually said, I will only debate you on politics. I don't care about his politics. I'm not going to debate Vaush. Don't you understand there's quality and tier of debate? I mean, that would be just another Kurgan, another T-jump. Something happened with when we were going to debate Dawson, and he couldn't do it because of something. He wasn't ducking the debate. He just couldn't do it at the time. The first time I couldn't do it, I had something come up. Then the next time he couldn't do it, had something come up, and so it just never materialized. So, but I mean, I think that what Ryan Dawson will do is present sort of a lot of the kind of standard libertarian style atheist arguments. So, I mean, I think you guys know how. I kind of think it would just be a repeat of the Adam Kokesh debate. I mean, I'm not saying that they're the same people. I'm just saying the Kokesh debate is going to be how every libertarian atheist debates. They're not going to be any different. So, I would debate Aaron Ra, but again, I mean, guys, don't you realize these are really low tier quality debaters? Aaron Ra, Vaush. These are not quality debate people. Dr. Malpass is a quality. That's more of a quality debate. I mean, Paul Washer wouldn't debate. He doesn't do debates. Again, all these people that you like, half these people don't even do debates. I'll debate Pat Robertson. Put your hands on the screen and give me money for my diamond mines in Africa. I'll heal your gout. All right, John 17. Jesus spoke these words and lifted up his eyes to heaven and said, Father, the hour has come. Glorify your Son. Oh, wait, no, did we do John 17? Maybe we did 7. It seems like I remember making these arguments a few weeks ago when we talked about Pentecost. Yeah, because we talked about glory, the glorification of the Son. So we did, because we talked about perichoresis at the end of John 17. And then Jesus says at the end of John 7, I desire that they that you have given me may be with me where I am. And that's going to be, right, the descent of Pentecost is going to be fulfilling this prayer. So Jesus' high priestly prayer, right, is going to be asking for this gift for the church, the presence of the Spirit, which comes in Acts 2, to empower the church, right, to do the mission that Jesus set out. Come on, guys. I mean, these people are not going to debate. These are not serious people like Steven Anderson. Come on. That they may behold the glory, my glory, which you have given me. So even the glory that Christ has, right? For you loved me before the foundation of the world, O righteous Father. For the world has not known you, but I have known you. Therefore, these have known that you have sent me, and I have declared to them your name, and will declare it, that they love me, which have loved you. They which have loved me may love you, that I may be in them, and they may be, that which you loved me may be in them, and I in them. So this is, again, the parallel between the Trinitarian indwelling and the life that the Father has in the Son has in the Father, as well as with the Spirit. That indwelling and that union can be as strong, not one-to-one correspondence, because we don't partake of the essence of God. That would be blasphemous. That would be to create new hypostases in the Trinity. But know that we partake of the uncreated glory, the powers, the energies of God. So this is why, for us, of course, the essence-energy distinction is so crucial, so important. It's because it shows how we're saved. It gives the how. In other words, and only Orthodox Christological metaphysics gives us the how. Right? The other world religions don't have this and don't teach this. And in this regard, only Orthodox Christianity teaches the nature-person distinction, teaches the distinction between essence and energy, and then teaches the reality of uncreated grace. The other sects, the other groups, they're confused. They're wandering, chasing their tails, because they don't have these fundamental revealed doctrines. They have pieces of the picture, but they don't have the full stained glass, you see. But we notice that the parallel, which we saw last time, is that there's going to be a real participation, right? And this refutes Protestantism, because the participation is not said to be merely of some created state, merely of some juridical state, merely of some hypothetical imputation of Christ's righteousness to your bank account. It is actually said to be a real participation in the uncreated glory that the Son possessed with the Father before the foundation of the world, thus making us immortal, eternal, right? So it's really selling the worldview short to, all right, people that are just spamming this stupid stuff. You're just going to get booted. You're just wasting everybody's time. I mean, we're going to talk about the gospel, right? So we're here to talk about John 17, John 18. So just keep spamming who I should debate. You're just wasting your own and everybody else's time. So it really sells the position short in regard to Protestant, doctrines of salvation, soteriology, to be reductionist, right? And to exclude that real metaphysical participation. And really, it's only about as far as the Protestant position can go, is to say that we have some, there's a working of the Holy Spirit in our heart, in our lives, right, to make us holy, which is not in itself wrong. Like, the phraseology of those sentences is not wrong, but what they mean by it isn't what we mean, right? And what we mean is a participation in the uncreated grace. That's not what the Protestant means. And I've never heard a Protestant say that we participate in uncreated grace, right? And maybe there's one somewhere that thinks that we do. maybe one's influenced by Orthodox theologians, perhaps, but it's not really at all the historic classic Protestant position at all. It's definitely not the classical Reformed view. I mean, the classical Reformed view has us basically being placed into a better created state, right? Adam was in this preeminent created state of grace, right, in the garden, that he could have merited initially, right before he fell. He was in a covenant of grace. He fell into some covenant of works or whatever. And then Christ had to come and merit the covenant of works to earn a status of legal righteousness that's imputed to the bank account. Okay, but that's all created grace. Even still, do you understand the Protestant system? It's created. It's a created status. It's things that Christ, quote, merits in time and space. And so what Christ is communicating to his human nature and to his humanity and to his body is not an uncreated reality. So the Protestant position falls prey to the objection that of the Barlaymites, right? That St. Gregory Palamas has against the Barlaymites. It's the same problem. I'm not saying that Protestants and the Barlaymites have the exact same position, but it's the same fundamental problem. Because all you're doing is basically positing a Nestorian Christ, right? Who's a man that merits within time and space and history this status of fulfilling the law. That's a legal declaration. Okay, we declare you innocent, and then you're declared innocent, right? And so, yeah, there's this additional thing that the Protestants says, oh, okay, well, yeah, but there's also the work of the Holy Spirit in your heart, right, to regenerate you and to sanctify you. Right. So there's regeneration and justification and sanctification in this sort of logical step process in the Protestant position once you, quote, believe. But again, the metaphysical problem with this position is that it's not actually granting to the individual a participation in the uncreated. It's just granting to you a better created state. But as Athanasius argued against the Arians, right, if that's all we're getting, then there wasn't really any need for an incarnation. And some of the theologians in the Thomist position have said, no, that's actually true. There was no actual need for an incarnation. God could have just willed it to be the case, or conceptually caused it to be the case that you're just made righteous, right? So you go from one created state to another created state. But Jesus says in John 17 very clearly that the participation that he came to give us is a participation in the glory that he shared with the Father before the foundation of the world. And I don't know anybody, right, who thinks that the glory of God is a creature. I've never heard anybody posit. It's just so absurd, right? Maybe there's somebody that thinks this is a crazy position, but nobody thinks that God's glory is created. I mean, it's crazy, right? Well, then why would we be so adamant on denying a participation in uncreated grace? And what do we see that the fundamental problem is here? Well, at a metaphysical level, the Protestant metaphysic, typically speaking, has just defaulted to the doctrine of simplicity of the classical Latin, Augustinian, Anselmian, Thomistic West. Right? Everybody knows the Protestants, the classical reformers, Martin Luther, John Calvin, Zwingli, they tended to just default to Augustinian assumptions, right? Augustinian doctrines of simplicity, grace, right, etc. Predestination, election, unconditional election, blah, blah, blah. And the problem there is more fundamental in terms of God's relation to the world, simplicity. And this is why Augustine posited that grace has got to be some kind of created reality, a created love and a created justice. It can't be the love and justice that God himself possesses. And the Council of Trent, following Augustine, confirms that. It says the grace of justification is not the justice that God himself has, but one which is given to you as a creature. Well, that's the whole gospel there, right? Hinging on this distinction, this thing we can't accept in Trent. Jesus says that what we participate in is an uncreated reality. And the typical objection to the Latin Western mind, be it Roman Catholic, be it Calvinist, be it Augustinian, be it Thomistic, is that distinctions that are real entail composition, division, separation, and tension. And we're simply saying, no, it doesn't. Right? There's no necessary a priori metaphysical basis to the belief that real distinctions entail composition, division, separation, or dialectical tension. And that same point is going to be made against Muslims. There's no reason that a real distinction, right, between persons or between attributes and energies entails that. And the Muslim believes in a real distinction between, the Sunni professes at least, a real distinction between attributes. Now, whether they actually are consistent with that is the same as against a Thomist. Are they actually consistent with that? Because they confess two different things, and that's the point here, right? And why are they confessing two different things? Well, because the metaphysical assumption is such that the metaphysics conditions what can and can't be the case in terms of distinctions. But notice that none of that is in John 17. None of the metaphysical absolutes that the Roman Catholic, the Thomistic, the Muslim positions demand is present in Christ's Trinitarian discourses. I mean, just from the outset, right, if you look at the Sanusi Creed, they would say that the indwelling of one hypostasis in another violates the law of identity. That's what it actually says, that indwelling is not possible because one being, one substance can't be another substance at the same time. That would violate the law of identity. So the Muslims are being consistent with, on one level, their metaphysical assumption. Now, then they turn around and beg the question and say, oh, but actually, the attributes of God are distinct. They are not the essence or the entity, as they say. They are not the entity, but they're not other than the entity. Okay, so they double speak here, right? Meanwhile, the rest of their position doesn't allow for those kinds of middle terms, middle positions, right? And in the same way, we see the same world religions falling into placing pagan Hellenic metaphysics before revelation. So God can't be three in one because any substance is a single substance. And a substance, according to Aristotle, can't have multiple substances in one single substance. Right? There's a basic unicity to substances in Aristotle. Now, I know the Sanusi Creed, right, it doesn't totally follow Aristotle. There's places where it does, but Thomists, right, in this regard, oftentimes do try to follow Aristotle. So when they cash out simplicity, right, it's a Neoplatonic doctrine as well as a Aristotelian doctrine as well. So when it comes to composition and perfection, they will follow Aristotle. When it comes to simplicity and the no real distinctions in the monad, they're going to follow the Neoplatonic idea. But again, the point is just simply that when we read John 17, we're not reading Neoplatonism, we're not reading Aristotle, we're not reading any of these later Hellenic doctrines, right, which disproves all of the opponents who say the Trinity is a Platonic Greek metaphysical doctrine. None of that is here. Terms are used later on in history, right, like perichoresis, to capture what is being discussed here. So we're not saying that the doctrine of identity or individual substances that Aristotle talked about is one-to-one correspondence with what Jesus is talking about, right? Or that hypostasis, as used by Plotinus, is a one-to-one correspondence with what Jesus is saying here. No, it's just you have to understand the church fathers in the context when they write these things, the sense in which they mean these things. And so many people trip up over words and assuming right? The words have one sense, one referent, one context. And this is really the whole, this and the Neoplatonic doctrine of simplicity is the root of the whole problem with Roman Catholics. And it takes forever to get them to see that. So why do you want to come on the stream and ask stuff like that? I mean, obviously you're just here to cause division. I mean, does it sound like we're people that are like just stoned all day? I mean, we just literally just gave you, an in-depth metaphysical discussion about Trinitarian apologetics. And you want to come and say nonsense like this? I mean, this is obviously just baloney, dude. That's the best of the opponents. That's all they can bring, right? They can't actually bring anything substantial. They can just... I noticed on Twitter the other day, it was like dozens and dozens of trads just talking gossip, smack, hardly any of it accurate. And not a one of them will actually come and debate, right? And none of the arguments were about anything that I said. It was all ad hominem, right? They don't actually talk about anything to do with the actual theology, right? So, no, you're blocked, and I don't believe you're actually a new convert. Get lost, dude. I mean, look, so why don't any of these people ever come and debate? Like, we open up the Discord every week, multiple times a week. Right? I'm gonna give you the link right here. Right? Here is the link. The Discord. Now you have to be vetted. Obviously, you're going to have to answer the questions, but I open it up every week. And by the way, we give every person who's an opponent, it doesn't matter if you're a Roman Catholic, Muslim, Protestant, I give you the floor. So you can come debate and you can bring any challenge you want and you get the floor. You get the open floor to state you can have as long as you want, within reason. I'm not going to let you sit there and talk for 2 hours straight, but you can have as long as you want to present any argument or arguments that you want. And you can come debate. Now, do you understand that a debate means that we're going to discuss a topic objectively? Okay? We're not here to debate what I said 10 years ago on a joke comment in a thread. Okay, that's not a debate. Debates are not about a person's personal life. They're about the positions. See? So, are you so uneducated that you think that a debate is just digging up dirt on someone? That's politics, dude. Like, politics is let's destroy a person's character so that people don't listen to them. Okay, that's not a debate. Debate has nothing to do with a person's character. So, there may be times to bring up questions of character, sure. But when it comes to a debate, like if I'm going to debate Azrar Rashid and he comes on and he says, your arguments are bad and false because you're ugly and stupid. Okay, that's not an argument. Or you cheated on your girlfriend in high school, so your arguments are false. Okay, that's not an. Do you understand? That's not what a debate is. So even if I was literally a totally wicked person, just totally evil, and let's say I'm a Freemason and I'm a Illuminati confirm and it's all fake and I'm a Wiccan and I'm here to promote Wiccanism, all the nonsense that traditional Catholics make up. Even if all of that was true, like even none of that actually refutes the argument, right? So maybe internet rumors aren't the way to learn about people's positions and what they actually say. And I think it's actually like the last refuge. Like when a person's at the stage where all they can do is just internet gossip, right? Then that's pretty much signifying that they've lost, right? I mean, they don't have anything else that they can go to. I saw this boomer woman, right? She was like going off on Twitter, begging all the other Roman Catholics to help her, right, to refute my arguments. And then it was all just, well, let's dig up dirt. And I'm like, so you're conceding the argument. I mean, do you understand that, like, that's not going to, do they not understand that you're not going to keep people in your position by digging up dirt on me or my life? It's not going to defend or prop up the house of cards that is the papacy. And even if I was like a Wiccan and Illuminate Confirm and a free, all whatever you stupid stuff you think, even if I was destroyed, right? We've already created, by God's grace, an entire army of apologists who can continue the work that I do better than I can. So we've already spawned, right? We are the pod people who have spawned the offspring of an army of apologists, right? If we're just sitting around stoned and drunk all day, I don't even drink, dummy. I quit drinking years ago. I hate alcohol. And people find me annoying because I don't drink. When I go to stuff, people are like, you really don't drink? No. Did you think I was bullshitting? I don't drink. I hate alcohol. Literally, I hate it. Now, I believe in the Eucharist, obviously, but I don't believe that the Eucharist is going to affect me in a bad way. It's just so stupid. Like, is that all you guys can come up with? And to me, it just shows that we're at the point where the Roman Catholics have lost. Like, they've totally lost. They're totally defeated. All of them, Ibarra, Lofton, right? How much whining can they extract and squeeze out of a heated debate from 3 years ago, right? They're still whining about this. And Lofton went on to try to concoct something that he found an out-of-context joke I made 10 years ago in comments and tried to twist that into making me into some sort of drug dealer or something, which is retarded, right? Just totally ridiculous. And then what happens? Oh, it comes out that actually he's doing things 10 times worse than what I did publicly. Oh, but it's okay because we shouldn't get into people's personal lives. Dude, these people have spent 3 years talking about nothing but personal life in regard to me. And just the dishonesty of then turning around and saying, oh, but when it's Roman Catholics, how dare you go into their personal lives? Meanwhile, you spent the last 3 years just digging up and spreading just actually 90% of it just made up nonsense, right? Because I'm friends with a guy who has Wiccan in his name. He's not even actually a Wiccan, right? A teenage guy who created that name because he thought it was edgy. Okay, and I got this guy to buy a Bible, and they think that I'm secretly working with him to promote Wicca. I mean, just like the lowest, dumbest, retarded level stuff. As if that would. I mean, don't you think years of writing against, speaking against, refuting Gnostics, pagans, occultists, Wiccans, Darwinists, atheists? Does that not speak to what we're actually doing here? This is so dumb. But again, I'm not mad or upset. We're actually in a great position here because we have multiplied. And I don't think they thought I was stupid or something. We've been working for the last 3 years to build up an army of apologists. Don't you understand? That's what we were doing, and we've done that. And so now we've got guys putting out content consistently in areas that I don't even know about, right? David the Merle Medwhite, he knows the Monophysite Coptic position better than me. And so he can just, right, replicate like a self-replicating good virus and go after that stuff, right? And he's already in 2 debates decimated their best guys, made them embarrassed them, okay? We've done this with the Roman Catholics, right? Orthodox Shahada, putting out the most amazing stuff in regard to Islam, okay? Lewis, Kai, putting out solid stuff. Ubi Petrus, right? Not because of me. He was doing his own apologetics, but he's great at what he does. He's better at the papacy than me by far. So Ubi does great work, right? So don't you understand? Like we've replicated. We've got all of these people. Father Deacon Dr. Ananias, right? He's a master of the domain of epistemology, right? He's better than me at that. He can go out and just demolish these positions from an academic perspective. So, I mean, look at the fruits. Look at what we've done in the last 3 years. By God's grace, we've seen thousands of people convert to orthodoxy. And these people are losing their mind in a rage. And we're 3 years into this, and they're still just looking for personal dirt. And then people forget about it, and then another one of them will dig up the same dirt that's already been forgotten and rehash it, right? So just wait. In 2 or 3 months, they'll take that stupid joke comment that I made 10 years ago, and they'll circulate that around again, probably Lofton, right? As if, like, that hasn't already been just kind of, like, shown to be stupid. And it's obvious. You can read the comment and see that it's a joke. It's so dumb. And everybody that knows me, many of the people in the Discord, a lot of these people have met me in person. And they really thought that I drank. And then they get around me in person and I don't drink. And they're like, oh, you really don't drink? What do you think? Do you think I was lying? Dude, I'm the dude that you see. That's the real me. Anyway. So, we don't need to waste everybody's time on this stupid stuff. But I can't help but just reply to this at times. 90% of the time, we don't even mention this stuff, right? All this stupid drama that people are doing. But this is every day, by the way. They do this every day. They have nothing better going on in their lives to do this every day. Again, I don't have to answer your questions about children. I've said many times, it's not about, we leave that up to God. Okay? So you don't need to know my personal life in terms of, like, why does that even matter? Why are you so worried about my personal life? Like, everybody wants to ask these personal life questions. You know, something that is, like, I don't care about other people's personal lives. Do we ever go into people's personal lives here? Almost never. So maybe try to be more factually, objectively based than worrying about people's personal lives. Why? Why are you worried about it? Okay, well, you don't need to be curious. It's not necessary for you to be curious about my personal life. And, you know, we've had that other idiot doing this for the last couple of years, asking about this, constantly talking about it on the internet. Yeah, I'm just going to ban the people trying to get into this stuff. It's just really annoying. You want to know what's really going on? Jamie and I are having clone babies. We are working with the Illuminati to have clone babies, and we're mixing the seed with the seed of Bill Cosby. And we met up with Bill Gates on how to do this. So I'm secretly part of the Epstein project with Bill Gates to mix my seed with the seed of Bill Cosby in the CRISPR system, and the CRISPR spits out what will be the perfect Ubermensch. So that's what's really going on with our offspring. All right, so we were at John 18, and we had a good sort of dive into what was going on with 15, 16, 17, well, 14, 15, 16, 17, high priestly prayer. And I should point out that if you look at Acts, this is important for the Old Testament typology, these chapters called the high priestly prayer chapter, right? Because in Acts 3:22, Christ is shown to be prophet, the fulfillment of the Old Testament office of prophet, priest in Hebrew 5:5, right? He's the high priest, the true high priest. And Revelation 19:16, the King of Kings, right? So the threefold office is fulfilled in the person of Christ. And again, that's very crucial because in the Jewish expectation of the Messiah, right, in regard to the covenant promises, we're looking for a figure who will be prophet, priest, and king. right? So we got to have somebody who's got a priestly lineage somehow. Now, wait a minute. But Jesus isn't from the Aaronic lineage. Yes, that's why the New Testament hangs such a strong argument on his Melchizedekian priesthood. Psalm 110, you are a priest forever according to the order of Melchizedek. And that's the Father speaking to the Son, right? The psalm is about the ascension. The Son is seated at the right hand of the Father. The Father says to him, as a result of what he did through his redemptive work, sit at my right hand till I make your enemies your footstool. You are a priest forever, eternally, according to the order of Melchizedek. Now, his Melchizedekian priesthood did not begin in the incarnation. It didn't begin when he came to earth. It wasn't invented when Melchizedek was born in the Old Testament, in Genesis. Melchizedek, in the Orthodox perspective, is a real human being, an Old Testament saint, who's a type of Christ. And so his priesthood is eternal. And so when Melchizedek comes, he's a type of that eternal priesthood that Christ possessed from the foundation of the world. He's the lamb slain from the foundation of the world. That's priest speak, priestly offering, oblation, you see. Now we have the office in the Old Testament of the prophet, right? And Jesus says, the prophets prophesied until John. Since that time, the kingdom has been proclaimed in the Gospels. So the last of the prophets in the Old Testament sense is John the Baptist. And then Jesus completes that because he is the last of the prophets, okay? And of course, he is the king because he's the King of Kings. And all kingly authority, all state authority, providentially derives from the higher authority. What does Jesus say to Pilate? You would have no authority against me or over me unless it had been granted to you from heaven. Jesus himself granted to Pilate the authority willingly, right, to die. Jesus, I'm saying, willingly dying under Pilate. So authority, as Romans 13 says, is derivative of heaven, even pagan authority. If you read the book of Daniel, we see this with Nebuchadnezzar. Daniel notes that Nebuchadnezzar, providentially speaking, even though he was evil, a wicked man, was still in authority by God's providence. So evil is, again, especially when we look at the biblical presentation of state authorities, civil authorities, evil is under the providence of God. And so Jesus is actually going to bring this up. And this is important because this helps, again, to explicate our understanding of the kenosis, right? So in Philippians, we have that statement of the Son of God stepping down, so to speak, into time and space. This doesn't mean that he lost divinity, right? In fact, the Philippians text says that he was equal with God. But being equal with God, he also was willing to step into the human estate to become incarnate, right? I mean, we don't do I'll do the super chats towards the end of the show. I don't have to do the super chats right now. Audio should be fine. So we've got a bunch of trolls tonight. I mean, y'all got nothing better to do than to come and fuss. It looks to me like audio should be fine. Oh my gosh. This is a bunch of annoying people in the chat tonight. Most of y'all we love. Not everybody. We love most of y'all. There's a lot of new people. Is this like people who've never been to the... I mean, we've been doing these live streams for 10 years now? Not 10 years. We've been on YouTube for 12 years. We've been doing live streams for 5 years? We've been doing live streams for 5. If boomers still don't get it, it doesn't fail. Why you got 5 minutes of gay synthesizer music at the beginning of your... Dude, come on. I'm not going to explain to you what a live stream is anymore. I mean, we've been here doing live streams for how many hundreds of live streams have we done, and people still don't get what it is. Anyway. I'm not doing it. Anybody who thinks that gematria is a way to understand reality in the future is insane. So, what did we just see with Marty Leeds? Come on. Gematria people have lost their marbles, Right? They're like the dude in Pi. Like they've gone crazy. So no, I'm not going to do it. I don't even know who Gematria Effect is, but just from the title, I already know I don't want to do a live stream with that guy. No. I forgot what I was talking about. So this is a little insight for the boomers. A live stream is a live broadcast. And to get people to come to a live stream, it helps to let it play for a little bit with music going to give people time to come in. And the longer that I wait, the more people show up. That's why there's minutes and minutes of Amid the Ruins music at the beginning of the live streams. Whoa, mind blown, right? And by the way, I don't know if you are not familiar with computers, but there's a thing called a mouse and a cursor, and you can actually move it in time. It's not time travel, boomers. It's actually moving the cursor to the desired minute that you want. Did you know you can actually do that? And believe it or not, it's not time travel. You're not going forward in time. So don't be afraid, boomer, to move the cursor. It's not going to put you closer to the end of your life. It's just moving the video time up. Does that make sense? Okay. So the next time a boomer does that, I'm just going to actually just show you on the screen your name, and we're going to make fun of that for the next hour probably. I'll do a whole live stream just on boomer jokes with the boomers that don't get why I play the music at the beginning of the live stream. I mean, this has been like years of the same dumb comment, dude. Years of the same comment. It's probably just one dude making the boomer profile over and over and over just because he thinks it's funny to get me riled up. Well, it's not actually riled up, right? It's just part of what we do here. We have fun. By the way, we love you, boomers. I'm not hurt. Don't get your feelings hurt, Snowflake. We love you, boomers. We love you guys. But come on. It's just a mouse and a cursor. Move it up. Electronic letters. We watched an episode of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and Buffy said she thought an email was an electronic letter. I thought that was funny. That was at that phase in the 90s when it wasn't really clear what we were going to call these things. I remember that. I remember being at the library when they first got computers in the library with internet, with the dial-ups. And people would say things like, electronic mail. You got an e-letter. You'd be like, e-letter. Let me go check my AOL. And that little mailbox would pop up and go like this. Electronic letters. I don't know who Mike Hogarth. If you ever considered debate with Country Bumpkin Preacher 3296, he goes by the name Country Bumpkin Preacher 3296 on YouTube. When are you going to debate him? I don't know who that is. I know John Wayne Bobbitt is. I don't know who Mike Hogarth. I don't know why I was thinking Bobbitt. Super Boomer. There we go. This is the kind of profile. This is the guy who's making the boomer comment, I'm sure, under every profile. All right, we're getting distracted here, guys. Come on now. We got to stay. This is the weirdest chat tonight. This audience tonight throwing me for a loop. It's not even a Bible stream. It's just turning into a roast. A roast. So the fact that it says Melchizedek was not born of, it means that it doesn't show his lineage. The argument is just being made that the fact that there's no mention of his lineage is like the way that Christ has no human lineage in terms of his divine personhood. It's not saying that Melchizedek didn't have a human father, right? He's not like some quasi-God being, right? So that's all the Hebrews argument is saying, is that were mysteriously not told about the origin or the history of Melchizedek on purpose. And the reason for that is because he's a type of Christ. That's all Hebrews is saying. That's all it's saying. It's not saying, I don't know why people get so, because I'm not trying to be rude. I'm saying I've never understood the Melchizedek thing to be that confusing. It's not that, it's just making an analogy, a type. That's it. Melchizedek is not an archon. He's not some demigod who, no, it's not saying that. Every human being has a human father, okay? It's saying that Christ's priesthood is not a biological, right, descent like the Aaronic priesthood. That's all it's saying. It's an eternal priesthood of the order of Melchizedek. It doesn't mean Melchizedek is eternal, okay? Melchizedek's priesthood derived from Christ's eternal priesthood. Okay, that's it. That's all it means. And Melchizedek is not Jesus. Okay, Melchizedek is a dude, right? When Jesus spoke in these words, he went with his disciples to the brook Kidron, where there was a garden. Now, this is significant because, of course, the garden harkens back to Eden. Right? We all know about the Garden of Eden. Man fell and failed in a garden, and there's an intentional typology here with Christ showing up and succeeding, right, in a garden. So Adam tested in the garden, fails. Christ, as the new Adam, tested in the garden, yes, tested in the garden, and succeeds. All right. So, and I'm talking, all right, so I'm speaking of right when he prays and whatnot. Judas betrayed him, knew that what Jesus would often go to this garden with his disciples, it says. Judas, having received a detachment of troops, offered, and officers of the chief priests and Pharisees, came there with lanterns, torches, weapons. Jesus, therefore, knowing that all things would come upon him, went forward and said to them, "Who are you seeking?" Now, to know all things that are going to come upon you is to be omniscient. Okay? So, Jesus is not lacking in knowledge. Jesus is omniscient. And we've seen this multiple times in the Gospel of John. Jesus knew what was in the heart of the woman at the well in John 4. For he knew all men. John said early on in John 1 or 2. He knew what was on the mind of Nathanael at the end of John 1, right? Under the tree. You can't do that unless you are omniscient. And we already saw what in John 5, John 7 and 8. All that the Father has, the Son has. Including all the same power, attributes, actions, and glory the Son has of the Father. Jesus' sonship is not temporal. He is eternally the Son of the eternal Father. So as our saints and fathers say, there's two begettings. There's the begetting of all eternity, which is mentioned again in Psalm 110 as well. Yes, Psalm 110 mentions the eternal begetting. That's why his priesthood is eternal. It didn't begin in time and space. Let's look at Psalm 110 again. Now, if you're in the Orthodox Study Bible, it's 109. Right? Most people are not using, well, maybe most people in our audience are using it, but in the Masoretic text, it's 110. In the Orthodox Study Bible following Septuagint, Psalm 109. The Lord said to my Lord, sit at my right hand until I make your enemies your footstool. Everybody should know that this is the ascension. Okay, the New Testament cites Psalm 110 many, many, many times. And undoubtedly, in every instance, it's talking about the ascension. The ascension is not the second coming, goobers. Okay, evangelical goobers out there. This is not talking about the second coming. The ascension is not the second coming. When did Jesus sit at the right hand of the Father? When he ascended. So this refutes all dispensationalism, all of that stupid premillennial nonsense. Okay? He doesn't begin his reign at the second coming. Can you read this? Do you understand this? Do you see that this is clearly talking? Look at every reference Psalm 110 in the New Testament, none of them are about the second coming. All of them are about the ascension. Have you read the book of Acts? That's when the ascension happens. Okay, not at the end of time. The end of time is not the ascension. So the kingdom began when he came and when he ascended. He calls the church his kingdom. Premillennialists, do you understand this? Sit at my right hand until I make your enemies your footstool. The Lord will send forth the rod of your power from Zion. That's the church. That's the preaching of the gospel in the church. Rule in the midst of your enemies. The church rules in history, in time and space, in the midst of her enemies. And the nations conspire all around the church to destroy her and her Messiah. Psalm 2. With you is the beginning. Psalm 2 says the gospel is the sword, the rod that proceeds from his mouth. That's the gospel. That's not a second coming with swords literally shooting out of Jesus' mouth like you're playing some kind of video game. That's how the premillennialists dismiss. They think they're living in a video game, right? Rule in the midst of your enemies. With you is the beginning of day of your power in the brightness of your saints. I have begotten you from the womb before the morning star. What did we see in John 1? The begetting of the Father is from all eternity. It's not a temporal begetting. Psalm 110 is referencing the eternal begetting right there. So there's two begettings of the Son. There's the eternal begetting of the Father, begetting the Son directly as a reflection of his own nature and person from all eternity. And there's the temporal begetting in that he was born of the Virgin Mary, in that he took his human nature from her. You are a priest forever, according to the Lord is sworn, and he will not repent. You are a priest forever, according to the order of Melchizedek. You will judge amongst the nations. This is about Jesus, obviously. Okay, I mean, and how many times have we seen over and over and over? We're going to have to do the Psalms, right? Because the entirety of the Psalms is basically proof of Jesus. The many messianic prophecies and all the typologies in the Psalms fulfilled in us. And until you understand this, you don't understand the strength of the Old Testament proving Christ. Now, we just saw this text in Judas, right? About Judas in John 18. And we want to step back and see this point that I'm making right now about Psalm 10 in Psalm 108. Because did you know that the Psalms are full of predictions of Judas? Yes. Not only does the Bible predict Jesus, it also predicts Judas. Now, if the Bible's not inspired, it's really astounding that there would be so many predictions. Right, and remember Matt Dillahunty, remember the Muslims, they don't know anything about this. They don't know what we're talking about. They have no idea what we're... Although some of the Muslims seem to think that there are predictions of Jesus somehow, right? Which I don't know how this... If the Bible's all corrupted, I don't know how it's predicting Jesus accurately. But we've got all these predictions that are so precise, even to the point of saying what would happen to Judas, that he would die, that another person would take his place in his ministry, that he would betray Jesus over bread. All of that's predicted in the Psalms. Did you not know this? I mean, like, how is this religion false when you've got thousands of pages of admitted, right? Even the liberals admit, obviously, these books come before Jesus, right? Obviously, the Psalms precede Jesus. So how do you have over and over and over and over and over? Well, guess what? Yes, there's unbelief, but most of these people, they don't even know. Like, they don't know that Psalm 108 predicts all these things about Jesus. But if you had read the Gospels, you would know, because the Gospels consistently quote over and over and over from the Psalms. Now, not just the Psalms, they quote all kinds of things. But do you understand that huge portions of dozens and dozens and dozens of messianic prophecies are in the Psalms? Remember that what we mentioned last time. The descent The descent into Hades, a doctrine almost lost in the West, whether it's Roman Catholics or Protestants. The significance of this doctrine almost completely lost. And yet it's all through the Psalms. It's all through the Messianic Psalms. All these Messianic Psalms are telling you that the Messiah would die and that he would enter into the realm of Hades and he would be raised up and then he would ascend. This is why Peter says it's the Spirit of Christ speaking through the prophets. It's the Spirit of Christ speaking through David. Yes, it applies to David. Yes, David is talking about things that happen in his life. But David's life is a type of Christ, of course. And it also, by the way, demonstrates again, as I've said many times, that the Trinity is in the Old Testament. The New Testament writers are appealing to the law, the prophets, the Psalms, like 110, to show the distinction in persons. The Lord said to my Lord, sit at my right hand until I make your enemies your footstool. Hebrews 7, it says this is about the ascension. I mean, it's not, I mean, so many people are just ignorant of what's even in the Psalms or the old. It's like they've never even read this, but they know, right? They know the truth. They know about Jesus. They know what's true, but they don't even know what's in this. And Jesus, by the way, rebukes people, right? When he comes and he teaches, he says, "Do you not know what's in the Psalms? Have you not read? Have you not read? Have you not seen?" How many times did Jesus say this in the Gospels, right? Like, have you not read the Psalms? Did you not know that it said this? So we look at Psalm 108, it says, do not pass over my praise in silence, for the mouth of the sinner and the mouth of deceitful man have opened against me. They spoke against me with a deceitful tongue. They have surrounded me with their words of hatred. This is Christ being persecuted, the betrayal amongst the high priests. They have warred against me without a cause. Instead of loving me, they falsely accuse me. But I continue to pray. What do we just see here in John 18? Judas is betraying him. Jesus goes to pray. They repaid evil for my good work. They hated me and hatred for my love. Set a sinner over him. Let the devil stand at his right hand. This is what happens to Judas. Remember, we just saw that the devil entered Judas when he betrayed Christ, right? When he is judged, may he go forth condemned. Let his prayer become sin. Let his days be few. May a different man receive his office. Let his children be fatherless and his wife a widow. And it goes on to talk about other curses on Judas, for he falsely accused me, etc., etc. Let another take his office. Have you read the book of Acts? Right? This proof text about apostolic succession. Judas, as one of the apostles, when we read the book of Acts, Acts 1, now this man, Judas, purchased a field with the wages of his iniquity. Falling headlong, he burst open in the middle, and his entrails gushed out. And it became known to all those dwelling in Jerusalem that this field is called in their own tongue the field of blood. For it is written in the book of the Psalms, let his dwelling place be desolate. Let another man take his episcopate. Yes, the Greek word in Acts 1:20 is episkopos. That's the episcopal office of the bishopric. And the bishops are the successors to the apostles. They're not apostles, they're the successors to the apostles. Right? So the office of apostle has died with the death of John. John is the last of the apostles. We don't have new revelations. We're not charismatics. We don't need Fatima. We don't have new revelations. Public revelation ceased with the death of John. But the apostles did appoint successors, which is the doctrine of apostolic succession. Now, if apostolic succession is not true, Protestants, why would someone need to replace the office of Judas? There's no replacement to that office. There's no successors to the apostles in Protestantism. Well, but there are successors to the apostles, and it's a historical lineage, and we see that in the books of Timothy, right? Paul's letters to Timothy and to Titus explain this succession, where you have the laying on of hands, and the transmission of the gift of the Holy Spirit. And that's directly out of the book of Numbers. Right? When there's the laying on of hands, Moses says, I wish that all of God's people had the Spirit of God to prophesy. Well, in the New Testament, that's fulfilled because that's what chrismation is. Chrismation is your own personal Pentecost, right? It doesn't mean everybody's a presbyter or a bishop, but the application of that principle of the prediction of Moses is fulfilled in the New Testament church. So, again, we saw in Psalm 108 or 109, if you're reading the Masoretic text, the betrayal of Christ. You can look at Psalm 113, where you have the devils being mentioned, Christ triumphing over the devils and ascending, right? Our God is in the heavens, right? All of these texts are referring to the ascension. And this is in the midst, by the way, of multiple Psalms that predict the Gentile church, right? So we can see Psalm 107 in the Orthodox Study Bible, Gentile church. The Gentiles will worship the Jewish Messiah, the Jewish God. We can look at Psalm 116 in the Orthodox Study Bible, 117 in the Masoretic text. Praise the Lord, all you Gentiles. This is quoted in Romans 15:8 of the Gentile church. Psalm 117, quoted in the New Testament about Christ. The stone that the builders has rejected has become the head and the head chief cornerstone. Oh, I thought it was the papacy that was the head chief cornerstone. No, it's the stone that the builders rejected that Jesus himself says is himself. Psalm 117, and that mentions the Messiah. It mentions the apostles. Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. Right. This is cited as a reference to the apostles. Appoint a feast for yourself. The Eucharist. There you go. So over and over and over. And by the way, those are just the recent Psalms that I was reading. We're really going to have to do all of them, right? I will take the cup of salvation, Psalm 115, right? I am the servant of your handmaid. Jesus is speaking as the Son of Mary, according to his humanity, right? I will offer the sacrifice of praise, and then he's resurrected in the courts of the Lord's house. There you go. And again, this pattern is in like all the Psalms, almost, not all of them, but many of them, right? A huge portion of them, right? The prayer, the struggle, the death, the descent, the vindication, the resurrection, the ascension. All through the Psalms. The betrayal, even, in many of them, right? And in many of them, the Gentile church. And some of them even Mary. Right? Was it Psalm 45, I think, mentions Mary? Now, again, if Jesus is the Messiah, that's what we would expect. We would expect all of these things to be pointing and signifying that. And when we read the New Testament citations of the Old Testament, particularly the Psalms, that's precisely what we see. We see over and over and over this Christological hermeneutic, even an ecclesiological hermeneutic, where many of the texts and references are even to the church. Right? Paul does this in Galatians 4, where he says that Hagar and Sarah represent the barren flesh Israel and the new Jerusalem, heavenly Jerusalem, the church, the true Israel. Right? By the way, I also did talks on the books of the Kings. Right? So there's plenty of typology in the books of the Kings, plenty of types with Elijah, David, Joseph, right? All of these figures are in varying degrees and in varying ways types and images of Christ. Even the sacraments come up in the Old Testament, right? Jesus compares the eating of the manna to the Eucharist. Paul compares the Exodus to baptism. But I did want to take an interlude there to talk about garden and the garden symbolism in the Garden of Eden, and Christ, right, going off into this garden to pray, and then Judas betraying him in fulfillment of just a sample of the predictions of the betrayal in these Psalms. And then Jesus, of course, saying, because he had been saying, right, that he knew all that was coming upon him. Right? Again, showing his deity, showing his divinity. Then he said, "Who are you seeking?" They said, "Jesus of Nazareth." Jesus said to them, "I am." Okay, the he is added in the English. So once again, affirmation of deity. John 18, verse 6, "I am." And when he said this, they fell down. Whoa. So power went out from him when he said this, "I am." And they fell down. So understand that the death of Christ is not, his life is not being against his will taken from him. Okay, he's willing to die. "You would have no power over me if it had not been given to you by heaven," he says to Pilate. "Therefore you seek me, let these go their way, that the saying might be fulfilled of which you spoke, of those that you have given me, I have lost none." Again, another prediction, right? Then Simon Peter grabbed a sword, struck the high priest's servant's ear, and cut it off. The servant's name was Malchus, and Jesus said, "Put away your sword into the sheath. Shall I not drink the cup that my Father has given me?" Right? What does this mean, to drink the cup that the Father has given him? Have you read the Old Testament? Have you read the Psalms? Have you read Jeremiah? Over and over and over, this is the imagery of chastisement. In the case of Old Testament Israel, punishment. All right? It's a figure of speech, right? Where, for example, there's times where God judges the nations. "I will give them strong drink. I will pour out upon them," right? "They will drink and they will be drunk in my wrath." Okay, so it's just a figure of speech showing chastisement, showing death, judgment. Okay, now this does not mean that the Father is rejecting the person of the Son. That would be anti-Trinitarian. Okay, we don't believe that. That's not possible in our theology. That's not a patristic or biblical doctrine. That's an anti-Trinitarian and or Nestorian doctrine. There's no severance between the Father and the Son. Right? It's not possible for perichoresis to cease to be. Well, what does this mean? Well, in the Orthodox view, the death of Christ is the severing of his human soul from his human body. So he, the divine person of the Son, really is undergoing death in his human nature. His human nature is his possession. So he's really experiencing it. It's not a phantasm. It's not a docetism. It's not a fake ghost appearance of death. It's a real death. It's a real severance of his human soul from his human body. Why was that going on? This is the doctrine of the descent into Hades, right? This is what refutes the Protestant doctrine of penal substitution. The Protestant doctrine of penal substitution. Because the descent into Hades is everywhere in the Bible. It's in the New Testament, everywhere in the Church Fathers, nowhere in Protestantism. This alone is enough to refute the Protestant PSA doctrine, because they don't teach it. Even though it's all over. Paul says, Psalms say countless times that he descended into Hades. Paul said, how can he ascend if he didn't first descend? Where did he descend? To Hades, the realm of the dead, to Sheol. How many prophecies in David's Psalms were there that he would be in Sheol? Christ. Now, how is that possible? Well, it's possible because the divine person of the Son in his human soul went into Hades. So the human soul that he possesses is the possession of the second person of the Godhead. It's still his inhypostatized human soul, even though it's severed from the human body. And he didn't leave his human body. He's still person to his human body and to his human soul. How is that possible? Because he's divine, because he's a divine person. This is the argument of the Seventh Council. So he descends into Hades as the person to the human soul that he possesses, that has been severed from the human body. No new hypostasis or person came to be as a result of this death. And he preaches the gospel in Hades. He's invited into the realm of death and Hades, Satan's realm, Just like when Neo invites, or is it Neo goes into, how's it go? Neo goes into Smith or something, right? And it destroys the power of Agent Smith, right? In the same way, Christ goes into Hades and in being invited into Satan's kingdom without knowing, right? Satan didn't exactly know who this was, right? So he's prodding and questioning Jesus, right? Trying to figure it out. If you are the Son of God, do this, or what about this? It's because he wants to. Satan's not omniscient, right? So he was trying to figure out who this was. He thought he had victory when he killed Christ, right? Ultimately, he's the one who was behind that, right? His human dupes and followers did what he wanted in crucifying Christ, but because God is wiser than Satan, this was all God's plan. And so inviting the Son of God into the kingdom of Hades destroyed Hades. And it was the plan all along. So it was a trapping the wise in his own craftiness. Speaking of the devil, right? The devil laid a trap and it became his own undoing. So death was destroyed by death. Because it wasn't just a dude that came into Hades. It was the Son of God invited into Hades via that death. And that destroyed the power of death. Christ went and harrowed Hades. He destroyed the kingdom of Hades and transformed death into life. This is the whole message of the Orthodox Easter service. Just go to an Orthodox Easter service, and this is everything that I just told you is the whole message of the service. Trampling down death by death. Christ is risen from the grave, trampling down death by death, and upon those in the tombs bestowing life, right? If you don't have the Hades element of this, the whole thing doesn't make sense. Thence you get Protestant penal substitution confusion doctrine. And you've forgotten this whole point of going into the kingdom of death to destroy the power of death. Ergo, Protestantism is heterodox. James White is a heretic, and so is Jeff Durbin and all the people that follow that. Ergo, that's the point. You have to have the descent. It's like having resurrection without incarnation. It doesn't make any sense. Okay, descent into Hades is just as important as all the other doctrines in this sequence. Don't you get that? How do Protestants not see that the Bible teaches the descent into Hades? It's all over the place. Now, the classical Protestants, as in Luther, reformers, right? Do you know how they interpreted this descent? I'm not kidding. They interpreted the descent into Hades to mean a figure of speech that signifies the Father damning the Son. I'm not kidding. Okay? The majority of them say that. Okay, that's anti-Trinitarian, dummies. You can't, that's blasphemous. Don't you understand that? Okay, so you can't have a penal substitution doctrine that destroys the Trinity. Duh, right? Yet that is precisely what the Protestant penal substitution doctrine does. That's what it is. Don't you think your Trinity and Christology doctrine should kind of be first, and then from that will flow the soteriology? Yeah, sure, exactly. Did you not know that that's what happens in the progress of church father theology? That what's settled first is Trinity, Christology, iconography. Then, as a result of that, the other doctrines flow from that. But every Protestant has his order of theology backwards, the Ordo Theologiae, and they do justification, regeneration, the regeneration of the Holy Spirit, the justification doctrine of imputed righteousness, the sanctification of the Holy Spirit, and then the glorification at the end of time. That is the logical Protestant sequence, which is ironclad. Then everything else has to be squeezed into that. I'll worry about Christology down the road. What matters most and foremost is justification by faith alone, right? No. Your order of theology is backwards. Christology flows from Trinitarian theology. That determines ecclesiology, determines sacramentology, determines eschatology. So they have the wrong starting point, the wrong order of theology, ordo theologiae. Only orthodoxy has the right ordo theologiae, beginning with the person of the Father, not beginning with the abstract essentialism of speculating about what an absolutely simple essence is. No, beginning with the person of the Father, the monarchia of the Father. For us, there is one God, the Father. I believe in one God, the Father. Have you read the Creed? Okay, the Creed says this. So the descent into Hades, as I think we talked about this last time, right? You can't have Pentecost without the descent because Christ has to destroy the power of death to send the Holy Spirit. And he's not going to send the Holy Spirit until he ascends. And he can't ascend until he descends. Paul says that. How could he ascend without first descending? Where did he descend? Now, some Protestants, that just means the kenosis of becoming incarnate. He descended from heaven to become incarnate. No. It says multiple times, as Jonah was in the whale, so must the Son of Man be in the heart of the earth. Peter says he went and preached to the spirits in prison. That doesn't sound like merely an analogy for being asleep or dead. It's not soul sleep. There is no soul sleep. That doesn't exist. That's a stupid heresy. No. He died and he went to Hades, and Peter says he preached the gospel to the spirits in prison. And all of the Eastern Fathers talk about this, by the way. It's just amazing that this whole doctrine is lost. It's just like, well, Christ died, and that was a legal exchange between the Father and the Son, and to become saved is to pray the Romans Road prayer of salvation Billy Graham tract, and then it's imputed to you, right? This work that he did. Meanwhile, you're still wicked, you're filthy rags, but God's going to call you and pretend that you're righteous because you have like a cloak over you that's a legal cloak of the righteousness of Christ. Okay, so God lies now, right? So he lies because he calls things righteous that in fact are filthy rags, you see. And when, even at the time of the Reformation, Catholic scholars and theologians called this out amongst the Protestants, I'm not joking, by the way, there were Catholic theologians who said, how can God lie and call beings and creatures righteous when in fact they are filthy rags? Because that's what the Protestants were arguing, right? Calvinists, Luther too. And I'm not kidding, the response of many Reformation era theologians was what's called theological volunteerism, or a kind of occasionalism. Like, oh, well, things are what they are just because God arbitrarily says they are. So if God arbitrarily says you're righteous, even though in fact you are filthy rags, then you're righteous because it's just whatever God arbitrarily wills at any moment. Because so then this doesn't even make sense in that system, because it's not God arbitrarily willing to call you righteous, because it's saying that you are in fact righteous, but you're also at the same time not. So there's a contradictory claim at work here. Now, if it were God arbitrarily calling you righteous because he arbitrarily decided that filthy rags are righteousness, that argument, I'm not saying it would work, but it would be a better argument, right? It would be God declaring filthy rags now to actually be what's good, right? Oh, now sin is good, by the way, and you are good because sin is good. That's how the voluntarism would have to work if they were consistent. But that's not how it's cashed out. They're saying you can, in actual fact, be wicked, filthy rags, unrighteous, evil people. But God is just going to look at you and pretend and act as if his dispositional stance changes to view you as righteous, even though in fact you are still in fact unrighteous. So actually the theological voluntarism, the arbitrariness of it, that doesn't work. It still doesn't work. It's still God lying. So God calls wicked things now good and holy. This is so dumb, right? And even the Catholic theologians at the time of the Reformation could recognize that this was nonsense, right? And what did Luther and others at the time resort to? Nominalism. Okay, but things just are whatever God says they are. So he can just say something wicked is good because he's God and he can do that. I mean, this is so dumb, right? This is just like all of this to right, make up a dumb doctrine to set yourself off against Rome. That's the reason the reformers were doing this, is to justify a system to not be part of Rome. And that doesn't mean Rome's right. Rome is bad too, you see. It's just two erroneous people. They're both wrong. But again, even the Catholic theologians could see that it required nominalism to justify this metaphysical nonsense. And by the way, that's not just me. Gabriel Bile, right? There's a whole book by Heiko Oberman about Luther's nominalism. So this is a well-known critique of the classical reformers. Then it says, the detachment of troops and the captain of the officers and the Jews arrested Jesus and bound him. And they led him away to Annas first, who was the father-in-law of Caiaphas, who was high priest that year. Now it was Caiaphas who advised the Jews that it was expedient that one man should die for the people. So we see that the machinations of the pragmatism on the part of the people who just thought it was pragmatic. Well, better to kill one guy, right? This sort of utilitarian argument, right? It's better to kill one person than for the whole nation to perish, is actually an unrighteous, evil act. But in God's providence, it worked out for the good. Simon Peter followed Jesus, and so did another disciple. Now that disciple was known to the high priest, and went with Jesus into the courtyard of the high priest. But Peter stood outside the door. The other disciple who was known to the high priest went and spoke to her who kept the door, and brought Peter in. Then the servant girl who kept the door said to Peter, "Are you not one of these man's disciples?" He said, "I am not." Now the servants and officers who had made a fire of coals stood there, for it was cold, and they warmed themselves. And Peter stood with them and warmed himself. The high priest asked Jesus about his disciples and his doctrine. And Jesus said, "I have spoken openly to you. I taught always in the synagogues and in the temple, where the Jews always meet. And in secret I said nothing." Now, note this text just as a kind of side note, because what do the internet goobers out here and many of the trendies on YouTube say that Jesus is? Jesus taught a secret doctrine. He taught a secret Gnostic. The real Jesus is a Gnostic. I had just this week some goober Twitter profile telling me, "Have you read the Gnostic this, that? You need to get into the Gnostic Jesus." As if we haven't done countless debates with Gnostics already, showing how dumb and just retarded, just all over the place the Gnostic systems are. There is no Gnostic system. It's just a bunch of hodgepodge. It's total confusion and relativism. And what do we see right here? Did Jesus teach a secret initiate doctrine? No. In fact, he says, "I didn't teach anything in secret." So, just as Irenaeus will say, St. Irenaeus, a century or so later, there's no secret Gnostic doctrines. The theology is public. You can read it here. Okay? There's no hidden when you become Orthodox, and then there's an inner core of the real secret. No. None of that exists. If it does, it's wrong. It's non-canonical. It shouldn't exist. I have said nothing in secret. No Gnostic doctrines. No higher inner core of Masonic jibber-jabber. Ask those who have heard me, and I said nothing. And what I said to them. They know what I said. So he's saying, you can ask all the people who've heard me teaching over the years what I said. Nothing was secretly taught. And when he had said these things, one of the officers stood by, struck Jesus with his hand. "Do not speak to the high priest like that. If I've spoken evil, then bear witness. But if not evil, then why did you strike me?" Now, notice, Jesus is doing a kind of apologetics here. All right, it's not wrong to give a defense and explanation of what you've done, even though he didn't have to. He's divine. He's the divine Son of God. But yet he still does. And he's doing this, of course, to show that his persecutors are the ones who are wrongfully spiting him and attacking him without cause. And again, in many, many, many of the Messianic Psalms, we already saw that, right? We saw the Messianic Psalms predicting those around him, the leaders even, wrongfully spiting him and persecuting him. We just read that in the Psalms. Here it is, the very thing we just read. Here, playing out as the Psalm said. Then Anna sent him bound to Caiaphas, the high priest. Now Simon Peter stood and warmed himself. Are you not one of his disciples? I am not. One of the servants of the high priest, the relative of him who cut Peter's ear off, said, I saw you in the garden with him. Peter denied again, immediately, and a rooster crowed. Of course, we have the three denials of Christ by Peter. Now, the Roman Catholic apologetic makes huge deal of this, right? Not that it's not a big deal. It's in Scripture. It's a big deal. But they will go to the text that we'll see, right? Feed my sheep, right? Are they not aware that Jesus' three statements to Peter, feed my sheep, right, is just in response to the three denials? Okay, nothing to do with Vatican I here. Where do they get Vatican I from Jesus' three replies to Peter, feed my sheep, right? Like as if the other apostles don't have the same duty and calling to feed the sheep. It's just so silly. So they will read all this wild eisegesis into this, right? Clearly, feed my sheep is the affirmation of universal jurisdiction and supremacy of all the church and all the sheep and all the bishops, because he said it three times. He said it three times because he denied him three times. Nothing in this at all about these outlandish, wild jurisdiction and above all God emperors, and it's just wild, right? And it's not surprising because the entire papal apologetic is built on wild eisegesis of texts that say nothing like what they say. Right? And that's, of course, in John 21. And the whole purpose of the passage is just the restoration of communion between Christ and Peter. Peter has done a very serious action, right? Peter is arrogant. Peter is, in many places in the gospel, rash and arrogant. And so he said, we can't let this happen. I won't deny you. And then Jesus said, is that really so? So Peter is rashly trusting in himself. You see, this is the whole point of the story is this. And then he fails, denies Christ three times, as Jesus said he would. Right? Jesus said, before the rooster crows, you will deny me three times. And Jesus said that to Peter in the upper room to say, you have a rash self-confidence and trust in yourself. And so at the end of John 21, right, Jesus is talking to Peter. Simon Peter, son of Jonah, do you love me more than these? Right? Do you love me more than the apostles? Yes, Lord. Then feed my lambs. Simon, son of Jonah, do you love me? Yes, Lord, you know I love you. Feed my sheep. Tend my sheep. Third time. Simon, son of Jonah, do you love me? And then Peter was grieved because of the third time. Do you love me? Then, see, Peter realized why it was three times. He was grieved because it's a reminder of the three denials, you see. Lord, you know all things. Oh, wait a minute. Lord, you know all things. That's called omniscience. That's an affirmation of all knowing. By the way, do we see that for the Muslims to appeal to the corruption of the Gospels for things like the deity of Christ or the Trinity? Do we see how much they're going to have to cross out? Right? I mean, they just throw this argument out like whenever somebody brings up a problem text. Oh, the Bible is corrupted! Bible is corrupt! And then they turn around and use the Bible whenever they want to, as if it's not corrupt. As if any of the texts that they use aren't corrupt, right? It's just totally ad hoc, total double standard. But do you see that if the deity of Christ and the Trinity are not true, then guess what? Most of the Gospel of John is now corrupted. Every chapter is wrong, false, corrupted, full of errors. And so you're not going to be able to have a consistent usage of these things. And what does every Muslim do? They appeal to the Gospel of John, for the Father is greater than I. Do you see the double standard there? And by the way, it's not just the Gospel of John, right? So the Muslim argument is all over the place. It's just grasping for whatever at any point with no concern for consistency. Right? So what would the Muslims say when we say, well, Peter says you know all things? Gospel corrupt. Right? That's all they're going to say. By the way, half the time, most of the time, they don't even have an argument for it being corrupt. They just throw that out. Bart Ehrman. Gospel corrupt, Bart Ehrman. Oh, really? What about the liberal scholars that say the Quran is corrupt? No. Right. So then Jesus predicts his death, Peter's death. Okay, do you see anything about Vatican I in that? I mean, what? Right? To go from that, I'm not joking. So they'll take that and Matthew 16 with these wild eisegesis. If you don't know what that is, that's reading into the text all of these meanings and all these things, right? I'm not saying that you can't do typology, but the Vatican has admitted that the Vatican I view was not present in the first millennium. Okay, read the Chieti document, right? The Chieti document, however you say it, Vatican approved, right? Admits collegiality is the normal form of the church in terms of its governance in the first millennium. Now, that's an admission of the Orthodox position. Thank you. Yes, not the papal monarchy. That's not the norm for the first millennium. So it's a doctrine that developed. Yes, exactly. Thank you. It's a development of doctrine. In fact, I was just reading Ludwig Ott. Ludwig Ott says the papacy is not clear. It's a doctrine that developed. Wait a minute. Is it a doctrine that developed, or is it, as Vatican I says, always known from the earliest day of the church to be the case that the Roman Church had supreme universal jurisdiction? Which one is it? Is it clear from the earliest days in every generation? Or is it a doctrine that developed? Oh, yes. Every Roman Catholic apologist plays this two-step game, right? Oh, well, you see, it's a doctrine that developed, Jay. Jay, what can't you see that it's a doctrine that developed? Why won't you listen to me talk for 3 hours straight to get one argument out? All right, that's my bar. So, do we see anything about Vatican I, universal supremacy and jurisdiction, in this obvious reversal of the three denials of Peter? No. Okay. Just ludicrous, really. But we had to jump ahead, right, to John 21 to look at that to see. So, now we have, of course, the very important, famous sequence of Jesus before Pilate. Thank you, everybody. We got a nice crowd. Be sure to hit like and share. Pretty good to have over 300 on a Monday night. We don't get a large crowd on Monday nights. We usually get the large crowd on Saturday, Sunday. You get 600-700 people on Saturday, Sunday. But what else is there to do on a Monday night? What else are you people doing? There's nothing else going on. You had that goofy fight between Floyd Mayweather and Logan Paul. Maybe you could excuse yourself less. Not really, I'm joking. But there's nothing going on tonight. Then they led Jesus from Caiaphas to the Praetorium. And it was early in the morning, but they themselves did not go into the Praetorium. That they should be defiled, but that they might eat the Passover. Pilate then, so Jesus is identifying Jesus as Passover, by the way. What accusation do you bring against this man? They said, well, if he wasn't evil, we wouldn't have even brought him to you. So, not a very good argument, right? This is like trad Catholic style of apologetic and argument here. Well, would we have even brought him if he wasn't evil? So the question was, what did he do that's evil? And their response is, well, we wouldn't have brought him to you if he wasn't evil. So not a very good argument. But Pilate said, well, take him and judge him according to your law, right, to Jewish law. The Jews said, well, it's not lawful for us to put anyone to death, right? Feast time. The saying of Jesus might be fulfilled, which was that he spoke, signifying by what kind of death he would die. Because he had already predicted that he would be put to death, right, via the Roman means of death. Then Pilate entered the praetorium and called Jesus, are you the king of the Jews? And Jesus answered him, are you speaking for yourself, or did others tell you this concerning me? Pilate said, well, am I a Jew? Your own nation and chief priests have delivered you to me. What is it that you did? Jesus said, well, my kingdom is not of this world. If my kingdom were of this world, then my servants would fight so that I would not be delivered up to you. But my kingdom is not from here. Well, then are you a king? Pilate says. Jesus said, you say rightly that I'm a king, for because of this, for this cause I was born. For this reason I've come into the world, that I should bear witness to the truth. And everyone who is of the truth, hears my voice. So if you love the truth, if you're of the truth, if you're sincere, you will hear and know the teaching of Christ. Now, this is a very important apologetic and kind of a classic text for what we call relativism. And if you don't know, Pilate, as sort of the representative of Roman paganism, pagan philosophy, pagan thought, unfortunately, quite often falls into relativism. Now, we've had many debates with pagans, as you guys know. We've done Bogalord Dave. We've done... Who was that last guy we did? The pagan that we just did, I forget his name. And we did another pagan debate. I forget his name too. So, we've done 3, 4... Mark Brahman, right? We've done 4 pagan debates, basically. 3 or 4. And in every case, what did we see pagan philosophy boil down to? Relativism. Pure relativism, subjectivism. And what does Pilate do here? That very thing. Truth. What is truth? What is truth, right? So we got this pseudo-philosopher kind of response from Pilate, right? Truth. What is truth, right? And when he had said this, he went again to the Jews and said, I don't find any fault in him. Presumably, right? So Pilate just sees Jesus as a sort of religious mystic or something, right? He doesn't really press the matter any further. He just says, what is truth, right? In other words, there's not truth. There's no such thing as truth, right? Every man thinks his own view is true. Whatever floats your boat, blah, 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 right? And I think you could say that Pilate is really representative of paganism, of atheism, of the state religion, of the pragmatic approach of the man of the state, the civil religion, the civic religion. And if you know about Roman state religion, in Rome, basically any of the gods were okay. You could do whatever you want as long as you pay obeisance to Roman law and Caesar. So if you say Caesar is divine, you can do your thing. And Rome saw that as the pragmatic way to govern the empire, right? Yeah, sure. Have all your dumb cults, do whatever you want within reason, within the basics of Roman, much like America, right? What's the American imperial system? Have your religion, do whatever you want, just follow whatever Uncle Sam says, right? Rough analog here. It's not 1-to-1, but basically, right? Difference, of course, being that, Rome said you got to worship Caesar. And, of course, we know in the first 3 centuries of the church, Many millions of saints die because they are not willing to admit that Caesar is the Son of God. So it's interesting that relativism requires you to submit to Caesar. I mean, you can be, so statism, right, and relativism seem to go together, don't they? Yeah. And statism loves relativism because what relativism amongst the population allows is for the state to pragmatically function as God. So the Jews here, in contrast to the Roman law, are correct in their approach to not believing that anything goes, or that Rome is God, or that Rome represents the march of God in history, or that Caesar is the Son of God, right? All of these divine appellations that Rome represented with Caesar and with its law and governance. Read something like Marcus Aurelius's Meditations, right? This is a good kind of insight into the Roman mindset about itself, about its own logos and law, right? According to Marcus Aurelius, Rome represents logos, its law. It is the functioning of reason within the natural world. And so Marcus Aurelius's logos philosophy is the perfect analog to the Roman Imperium. So it's kind of a double game at work here. It's kind of a sleight of hand here where they're saying, yeah, okay, you can have your cults, your religions, all you different people under the Roman Imperium, but you gotta put Caesar first. So as long as you acknowledge Caesar, do whatever you want. We don't care. So what that really means is that Caesar is God. The state is God. So it's not really relativism. And this becomes evident when Rome persecutes and martyrs millions of Christians for the first 3 centuries of the church. So it's not really a tolerant relativism, is it? No. It's a dogmatic state cult that destroys itself through persecuting the saints, and the saints convert and take over Rome, as predicted in the book of Daniel. Read Daniel 2. You have a custom that I should release someone to you at the Passover. Do you want me to release to you the King of the Jews? And they said, no, give us Barabbas. Barabbas must have been a popular dude. I've always wondered, like, why everybody shouted for Barabbas. Like, what was he, like a jokester? Was he a popular comedian of the time? I mean, like, why did they just pick this dude? You know what I mean? They just shouted for Barabbas, right? Like, maybe Barabbas was like a Billy the Kid kind of guy or something, like a folk hero. I don't know what. I always wondered why they shouted for Barabbas. The point is rather that they would rather a robber, right? And this is exemplifies the wickedness of mankind, the wickedness of the mob psychology, that an innocent guy, right? Actually, the Son of God, God Himself, right? On many levels here, things are bad here. It's not just the persecution of an innocent man, but also ultimately is man's rejection of God, right? Jesus is the Son of God. And so, we have to keep in mind, I mean, against the pagan LARPers, against all the opponents of the church, it's the Romans and the Jewish leaders and the Jewish people and the Roman leaders and Herod. They all conspired. Okay, so it's the world. Okay, it's not one group's better than the other. It's the world has rejected Christ. The world rejects God. And if you read the Gospel of John, right, we saw this throughout the whole Gospel of John. What did Jesus say? The whole world is not going to like you. Right? It doesn't matter. All of these groups are going to dislike you because you're following what I say. And what I say is the truth, and it convicts people. And people would rather try to stamp you out than be convicted and change their ways. That's what he said. Remember John 3? That was the whole dialogue with Nicodemus in John 3. Then, of course, Pilate took Jesus and scourged him. And the soldiers twisted a crown of thorns. So the Romans are mocking Christ and doing all this sort of, blasphemous mockery. And they put a purple robe. Ha, 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 you're the king. And they hit him with their hands. Then Pilate went out and said, I'm bringing him to you. I don't find any fault in him. Jesus came out wearing the crown of thorns and the robe. Behold the man. And then the Jews shout, no, crucify him. Right? So it wasn't enough to just scourge and sort of deride and belittle him. They demand the crucifixion. They're demanding the Roman punishment for Christ. And there's not even any logic to it, right? Like, we haven't even heard why. And then they say, well, it's because in our law, he's claiming to be divine. So again, the whole controversy of the Gospel of John, as we saw all the way back to John 1, John 4 and 5, John 6, John 8, especially John 8, right, is over his deity. So it's the exclamation of being the Son of God, the divine Son, and his claim of being glorified as much as the Father by the Father, having the same power as the Father to be able to raise the dead. On the last day, all of the world will be resurrected at the voice of the Son of God. That's a statement of divinity, dude. Like, all you anti-Trinitarians and heretics, like, how many times does he have to say and exclaim and show his deity? He's going to be crucified for claiming to be divine. Now, if he wasn't divine, if that wasn't what he taught, wouldn't he have said, no, you guys all misunderstood me? I mean, he's being crucified for claiming to be divine, as equally divine as the Father. And that's what the Jews are saying right here in verse 7. In other words, this is a proof of the deity of Christ. Because if he didn't teach his equal divinity with the Father, then this accusation would have been wrong. All he had to do is say, look, you misunderstood me. I was not saying that I was equally divine as the Father. But what did we see in every chapter of John, all the way up to John 18? He said, I am, over and over. He said, I am glorified with the Father. Pray to me. He said, pray to me. He claimed to know everything. I mean, these are divine appellations, obviously. It's such a non-brainer, right? I mean, a no-brainer when we read the gospel and we look at what it's not even controversial, right? I mean, if it was like one verse in the Gospel of John that, okay, maybe, we gotta try to figure it out. No, it's every chapter over and over and over. So only really hard-headed, blinded people could not see this, right? Therefore, when Pilate heard that saying, he was afraid. And he went again to the praetorian and said to Jesus, where are you from? Jesus didn't answer. Then Pilate said, are you going to not speak to me? Do you not know that I have the power to kill you, to crucify you, or release you? Jesus says, this is a key point, right? You would have no power against me unless it had been given to you from heaven, from above. Therefore, the one that delivered me to you has the greater sin. So in this instance, his betrayer, right, Judas, was worse off than Pilate. And Jesus is pointing out that, let's make no mistake about this, you have power derivative from me, right? The Son of Man who is in heaven with the Father. Remember in John 1, he had identified himself as, even though he was incarnate, yet being in the bosom of the Father while being incarnate. So no false dialectics here, right? It's a both and. And he's saying that I've given you this power. I'm dying because I will to die, right? You're not taking this from me against my will. From then on, right, this kind of, Pilate shook. Pilate kind of shook right here. He shook. From then on, Pilate sought to release him. The Jews cried out saying, if you let this man go, you are not Caesar's friend. So now they're trying to get him, right, in trouble with Caesar. Whoever says that he's a king speaks against Caesar. So notice, Jesus has already said that his kingdom is not of this world, but they're trying to frame it and twist it like he's a political revolutionary intending to overthrow Pilate and Caesar. Right, which is a lie. Pilate therefore heard these sayings and brought Jesus out and sat down in judgment seat in a place that is called the pavement. In the Hebrew is called Gabbatha. Now it was the preparation day of the Passover, and it was about the 6th hour. And he said to the Jews, "Behold your king." And they said, "Away with him, crucify him." Pilate said, "Shall I crucify your king?" They said, "We have no king but Caesar." Really? Now wait a minute. So here's the irony of, we've read the book of Maccabees, right? We've read about the Maccabean revolt against the oppressors. And here we have the high priests, Pharisees, hail Caesar, right? They are hailing, that's the irony here, is they're actually hailing Caesar. So in reality, the motivation of the chief priests and Pharisees is the same pragmatism that motivates Pilate. Then he delivered Jesus to them to be crucified, and they took Jesus and led him away. And he, bearing his cross, went to the place called the skull, which in Hebrew is called Golgotha. And when they crucified them, 2 others went with him on either side, and Jesus in the center. Now Pilate wrote a title and put it above the cross, and it said, "Jesus of Nazareth, King of the Jews." Then many of the Jews read the title where Jesus was crucified. It was written in Hebrew, Greek, and Latin. Therefore the chief priests of the Jews said, "Do not write this, King of the Jews," but he said, "I am the King of the Jews." Pilate said, "What I have written, I have written." And of course this fulfills, again, prophecies, as we see, because he is the king, right? Apocalypse, Revelation 19:16, you see. And he is the descendant of David. So he is of Davidic royal lineage, according to his humanity, from his mother. Then the soldiers, when they had crucified Jesus, they took his garments and they split it up into 4, each soldier having a part and a tunic. Now the tunic was without a seam, woven from the top in one piece. Therefore they said amongst themselves, "Let us not tear it, but cast lots for it, that the scripture might be fulfilled." Look at this. "They divided my garments amongst them, and for my clothing they cast lots." Psalm 21:19. Right? Once again, this shows us, right, not just that lone verse is a prediction of the crucifixion. When we go back and we read Psalm 21, we see that the whole context of that psalm is Christological, as are almost all the other psalms, right? So in other words, this is a hermeneutic key, not just about Psalm 21 verse 19, and not just about Psalm 21, but the hermeneutical approach to the Psalms in the Old Testament, which is consistently Christological, you see. Now there stood by the cross of Jesus his mother and his mother's sister, Mary, wife of Cleopas, and Mary Magdalene. And when Jesus saw his mother and his disciple whom he loved standing there, he said to his mother, "Woman, behold your son." Then he said to the disciple, "Behold your mother." Mother Mary. There's nothing wrong with calling Mary Mother Mary. She is the mother of the church. Read Apocalypse 12. In Apocalypse 12, she is presented as both the mother of Christ in terms of his humanity. She's a Theotokos, and the mother of the church. And from that hour on, that disciple took her to his own home. Right. So again, we see the typology there of Mary as the new Eve. Eve gives life to all human beings. All humans descend from Eve. Mary, as the new Eve, is the mother of all the new humans. That is, those born into the church. I'm not saying Mary is the church. I'm saying Mary is the preeminent image of the church. Hence, Theotokos, right? Now, after this, Jesus, knowing that all things were now accomplished, that the scriptures might be fulfilled. So notice the affirmation of the historicity of the Gospels, of the historicity of the Old Testament. This text would make no sense if the Old Testament wasn't true, if it wasn't historical, if it didn't record actual prophecies. Then these references would have no force. Okay? But the presupposition of the Gospels is that the Old Testament is authentic, it is real, it is true, it is inerrant, and it is inspired. Jesus says the scriptures cannot fail. They cannot be broken, he says in John. Remember that? If the scripture cannot be broken, in other words, Jesus' presupposition is that there's not going to be contradictions in scripture. You see. Jesus said, I thirst, and a vessel full of sour wine was sitting there, and they filled a sponge with sour wine and put it on a hyssop and put it to his mouth. When Jesus had received the sour wine, he said, it is finished. And bowing his head, he gave up his spirit, or his soul. So we're going to stop there because we've been going for a good while, over 2 hours. We're going to conclude in the part 2 with the rest of the Gospel of John, which is, 2 chapters. And a peek into the question of eschatology, right? Because we get some really powerful insights into the resurrection and the resurrection body, the body of the resurrected, in the resurrection of Christ in the Gospel of John. And by the way, in the letters of John, we also get some important clues, right? Where John says, for we shall be like him, we shall see him as he is. Our lowly bodies, Paul says in Philippians, will be transformed into the image of his glorious body. And we also are going to look at John's apocalypse. We're not going to do a whole exposition of the apocalypse. That's too difficult of a book. I would not be so presumptuous at this stage to presume to do that. Maybe, Lord willing, in 10, 20 years, I might exposit the book of the apocalypse. But I think that would be a bit much at this stage. There's a lot more I want to learn and imbibe by God's grace before I would attempt to exposit the entirety of the apocalypse. But we can look at a few of the chapters that have a direct bearing on the deity of Christ. And that's going to be very, very obvious, very prevalent in the apocalypse, particularly chapters 1, 2, 3, 4, and then later on 19 and 22. So we'll look at that in the part 2 as well. Not to get into eschatology per se, but to explain the connection between Christ's resurrected body, the features of that body, and what that teaches us about the eschaton, namely the new heavens and the new earth, right? The transfiguration of the entire cosmos, right? St. Maximus the Confessor, right? We'll be looking at that in the part 2. So everybody got part 2 last time for free because I got confused. And the last John 14, 15, 16, 17, that was the last talk, and that was supposed to be part 2, but I forgot. All right, let's see here. Super chats. Orthodoxy Chloroquine 250. Jay, I really enjoy your theology talks. Please keep them coming, and many thanks for the free master's level education. Well, thank you. Certainly, we didn't do theology in my master's work, so I don't want to give the impression that I'm giving you a master's level teaching in theology. I wouldn't claim that because I didn't study theology at a master's level, but we offer what we have been given. So if you enjoy it, then that's great. Hopefully it works. And we're hoping to, Lord willing, it'd be great if we do the entire Bible, right? I mean, we did all of Genesis. We've done some of Exodus, some of the books of Kings. We did all of Sirach. We just are about to be done with John, so we will have done the entire Gospel of John. We've gotten, about 12, 15 chapters into Isaiah. Maybe we'll go back to Isaiah. We need to finish Isaiah, I know. And then, just reading through the Psalms again, I just realized, man, there's so much in the Psalms that every time you go through the Psalms, right, which, you should be going through the Psalms every day, consistently, a lot, right? Need to go. I mean, so much of the Psalms is messianic prophecies, right? I mean, so yeah, we need to do that, but we'll see. We'll see. Bays, Michigan, are $3. Adam G of KMN is getting into his Jesus myth. Yeah, I told you guys that he was going to be saying a bunch of heterodox stuff a long time ago, right? And every time I've told you guys that somebody was going to be going off into crazy world, oh, dude, you're just scared. You're scared. You're scared. No. Don't you think I've done this long enough to get a good sense? I have a pretty attuned intuition. I mean, I can kind of tell. All right, nah, I'm not doing that. That's going off into crazy world. Okay. I've done this long enough. I know when to trust my gut. And I said a long time ago that guy was going to say a bunch of heterodox, or already was saying heterodox stuff. I don't know who Earl Doherty is. I mean, there's a million heretics, dude. There's a million goobers making up silly stuff. But I'm not trying to be rude, but I have no idea who Earl Doherty is. But anybody with that name, that's a dumb name. Just being named Earl Doherty. Okay, you're going to have bad theology. Do you have videos where you have covered this? Well, if there's messianic prophecies, then Jesus isn't a myth. How's that? Go watch all of the messianic prophecy videos. That would be that's a good place to start for disproving that Jesus is a myth. One of his claims is that Mark was ignorant of Levantine geography. I don't know. I mean, every one of the goobers has some argument like this, that Jesus said the mustard seed is the smallest seed, and there's a seed in Indonesia that's actually smaller than the mustard. I mean, come on. There's endless dumb arguments like this. I don't know what every atheist has another one that you've never heard, but they're almost always goober level, right? Like Marty Leeds' pi argument. That was so dumb, right? Nominal user to 2021, $10. Thank you for this tireless scholarship. Well, hey, we didn't get too scholarly today. We were just kind of going through the gospel text, right? We had a little bit of maybe metaphysical level stuff at the beginning when we were talking about divine simplicity, when we were talking about the doctrine of coherence and the ways in which God is one and many, etc. How do we predicate this differentiation and distinction in God? How is that possible? Islam, right? So we touched on some of that at the beginning, but thank you. I mean, but really today wasn't so much scholarly as it was just exegesis, exposition. Bays, Michigan, at $3. Jolly Heretic Ed Dutton said that he tried to contact you and didn't hear back. Well, I thought that initially he wanted to debate. And then he said, no, I don't want to debate. I want to have a talk. And then I don't remember what was happening at the time. I was like, I'm busy right now. So I wasn't trying to be rude. I thought we were going to do a debate, and then it wasn't a debate. So I'm not necessarily opposed to conversing with that person. So I will try to get back in touch with him. Thank you for reminding me. Maximus Carvalho, $3. By the way, I've also been really immersed in trying to prep for this Muslim debate, right? Because I think we're going to have a tier above, not to be rude, but Dr. Shabir Ali's debate was not so sophisticated. And I think we're going to get a little more sophisticated with Azrar Rashid. So, again, I'm immersed in all of these Muslim books, preparing for that debate. So, Maximus Carvalho, $3. Baptized next week after leaving JW's. Well, thank God. Yes, finally, it's great to hear that we are converting Arians, because we have expended a lot of time and effort and energy combating Arianism, Unitarianism, and anti-Trinitarianism in the last 2 years. Probably 10 streams, maybe, many hours. Debates, too, with Unitarians. So that's great to hear, man. Welcome to the church. Many years. David, $3. Would you do a review of the Lennox Dawkins debate? Yes, I've already said that's the next one to do. Thank you for reminding me. Not being mean, I'm just saying, yes, I'm aware, and that's the next one to do. I said that would be the next one I do. God bless you and your family. Thank you. David, $3. No, wait. Well, Emmanuel, $10. I watched Best Kept Secret in History, Brian Murarescu. I don't know what that is. Felt like another Jesus is only an idea with a well-intended message, I guess. You may be interested or not. In any case, thank you for your videos. I don't know what that is, but I guess I'll take a look at it. Best Kept Secret in History. Okay. Pano Costuros, $3. He says, reputation and character is destruction. Wait, reputation, character destruction is low testosterone, feminine subterfuge. Yeah, it is a very effeminate way of arguing and going after people. I mean, it's a soy way of going about it. Exactly. It's ad hominem. Yeah. Men overlook those things and deal with matters of fact at hand. Exactly. Yeah. I can't believe people don't know this. Well, I mean, again, you got a large swath of internet people are soy boys, and they don't know how to operate as a man and deal with facts, deal with objectivity. That doesn't mean you never make jokes or you never get heated or you don't, hold fast and debate, right? It means that the main point is the issues, okay, the topics. And again, this is just simply proven on our side by the fact that 95 to 97% of the content that we put out is about the facts, is about the text, is about the issues, is about the arguments. There have been maybe 2 or 3, 4 instances where we have called out or dealt with a specific person. Right? We did one time where we mentioned, we did a Matt Fradd stream. We did one time a Taylor Marshall stream. I did one about an Orthodox priest 3 years ago. I did one other one about a liberal priest 3 years ago. We did a couple critiques of Jordan Peterson's classical liberalism. So maybe a couple more to throw in. So what? We'll say 10 total. Okay, out of 900. By the way, I've taken some streams and videos down. So what's 10 out of 1,000 videos? Right? Like a tiny percentile? Yeah. So someone needs to get a message through to these hard-headed Roman Catholics that the reason that we are winning this interaction, exchange, battle, or whatever is that because we're dealing with the issues nonstop, and then the Roman Catholic response is largely to go after character. And that might work to convince some low-level dumb people, easily persuaded, emotionally manipulated people. But guess what? If that's the people that you're keeping on your side, that's a loss for you too. So if we're going to get, right, the people that get the arguments, right, we're going to get the cream of the crop. You guys can have the chaff. Orthodox Phronesis, $5. I'm reading on the person of Christ. Right? I assume the Kenneth Vesha book. I had a quick question. Does the impostatized human nature of the Logos exist eternally? No. It would not be a creature if it existed eternally. Jesus' human nature is created. He derived it from his mother. So the human nature comes from Mary. So it cannot be eternal. Is human milk vegan? $50. Nice. Sweet. Thank you. It's a fat super chat. When you stare into the boomer stares back at you. Oh, that's a great twist of the Nietzschean phrase. Behold the boomer. Ecce boomero. When I hear about logos, I'm ignorant. Wait. I have my views changed when hearing about logos. I am ignorant, but I appreciate the more intelligent aspects of Christianity. Thanks for the education. Oh, wait. No, I'm sorry. I skipped the rest of his. So, is human milk vegan? Said, the boomer judges you by the tuck of your shirt and the part of your hair. That's true. That's a wise statement. Thank you so much, though, for that. Fat Super Chat. Is human milk vegan? Charlie Brown, $76, $5. Thank you for your efforts. I was raised Catholic, and I was agnostic in my 20s and 30s. I had my views changed hearing about logos. from me or from another person? I don't know. I'm ignorant, but I appreciate more intelligent people. Well, I would say if you want to get deeper into logos, go back to the first talk that we did in this series from John 1. So again, we've done the whole Gospel of John almost. We're at the end of it. And go back and find... we did a pretty lengthy exposition of logos in John 1. And I think the big difference is that for most people who have popularized and have talked about logos in the last few years on the internet, this is perceived to be some sort of abstraction or principle of logic, which, I mean, that's what Marcus Aurelius says. Okay, that's not what John is saying in John 1. Okay, it's much more than that. It's much richer than that. In John 1, it's an he, right? Logos is not an it, it's a he. It's the second person of the Godhead. It's Jesus. Ruben, $10. Ruben B. Keep up the good work. You helped me in my journey towards Orthodoxy. Hey, that's great. Glad to hear that. Same for my buddy. We'll be chrismated soon in a Russian Orthodox church. Awesome. By the way, I can't visit your site from Holland. Yes, that's because of so many hack attacks from Netherlands and Holland. So if you, all of you, you're poor, not you personally, but this realm has apparently a lot of soy Vikings that try to hack my site. And we had to basically block the soy Viking lands from trying to hack my site. So y'all need to root out those little criminals out there trying to hack my website. You're soy Vikings out there. I'm just joking, by the way. Gerald Norris, $100. Wow, thank you. Great content tonight. Wow, keep going. Thank you. That's a big, hey, you guys, people like that, make these streams really worth it because it's awesome. And then Don with another fat super chat. Always miss the live streams. It's a time zone. Hey, sorry, man. We try to do a lot of live streams. So maybe, is it too late or is this like way too early for you? I guess it depends on where you are. But, you know, that's okay. Even if you miss it live, you can always drop a fat super chat. By the way, you can leave a super chat through Streamlabs at any time. So if you see this video 5 years from now, although I doubt we'll be here 5 years from now, if you see this video in a month, you can still leave me a super chat via the Streamlabs. And of course, be sure everybody to head on over to The Rock, aka The Rock Finn, because Rockfin, hey, they really love their creators. It's nice to be. It's kind of a shock, really, to be on a platform where they like their creators, as opposed to always being worried about the higher ups erasing your existence at any moment. See, Rockfin doesn't treat people that way, and I think that's why they have a huge advantage, and that's the future, dude. They're a forward-looking company, and not just for that reason, for many other reasons. So be sure to head on over to The Rock. And thank you guys so much for those very generous fat super chats. Look for the debate with Sheikh Ezra Rashid in the next 2 weeks. Pray for us. Pray for me. We'll be speaking to a lot of Muslims, so it's going to be a large crowd. We want to definitely speak the truth as best we can, and hopefully